The world is reeling from the loss of a giant. Hulk Hogan, the man who once defined an era of strength, spectacle, and swagger, has passed away. For generations, he wasn't just a wrestler, he was a larger-than-life hero, a symbol of American bravado wrapped in red and yellow. Whether you loved him or questioned him, Hogan was impossible to ignore. His story wasn't just about championship belts or bulging muscles, it was about the persona that leapt off the mat and onto the screen, into our homes and deep into pop culture. News of his death sent shockwaves not only through the wrestling community, but also across Hollywood. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson posted a heartfelt message on social media. "Hulk was one of the reasons I even stepped into the ring. He showed us how to be larger than life, and still human behind the scenes." Sylvester Stallone, who starred alongside Hogan in Rocky III, said, "He was thunder in human form, a true warrior and a true friend. The ring was his kingdom, and he ruled it like a champion." Even Arnold Schwarzenegger chimed in, writing, "We didn't just lift weights together, we lifted each other. He brought energy and excitement wherever he went." These tributes weren't just platitudes, they were reminders of how many lives Hogan touched. He inspired actors, athletes, musicians, and everyday fans with a message that seemed simple but resonated deeply. Believe in yourself, fight the odds, and never back down. But what made Hogan's story truly unforgettable wasn't just the triumph, it was the transformation. Because before the lights dimmed and the tributes poured in, Hulk Hogan had already lived 3 lifetimes in one. On July 24, 2025, Terry Bollea, better known to the world as Hulk Hogan, was found unresponsive in his Clearwater, Florida home. Emergency services responded immediately. Paramedics performed CPR for over 30 minutes in a desperate attempt to revive him. Despite their efforts, he was pronounced dead at Morton Plant Hospital at the age of 71. Official reports cite cardiac arrest as the cause, and no foul play is suspected. But even with medical explanations, the world seemed caught off guard. As news broke, thousands gathered outside WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, some holding signs, others simply silent. Online, millions of fans posted tributes, memories, and photos. The hashtag #ThankYouHogan trended globally for 2 days straight. His official fan club website crashed from traffic within minutes. WWE released a tribute video within hours, capturing not just his wrestling moments, but his pop culture legacy. Networks replayed classic matches, films, and interviews as viewers began to mourn. CNN, ESPN, and even late-night hosts opened their shows with tributes. Jimmy Fallon recalled meeting Hogan as a child, calling him the most unreal person I'd ever seen, and the kindest. News anchors struggled to contain emotion as they reported the passing of a man who had once seemed invincible. For many, this wasn't just a celebrity death, it was the end of a chapter in their own personal histories. Whether you grew up in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, Hulk Hogan had left his mark somewhere in your memory. Before the movies, before the scandals, before the politics, Hulk Hogan was a phenomenon that reshaped the wrestling world. In the 1980s, Hulkamania wasn't just a slogan, it was a cultural tidal wave. Hogan's charisma, over-the-top energy, and unmistakable look turned him into the face of professional wrestling. He was the centerpiece of the first WrestleMania in 1985, a spectacle that catapulted WWE into mainstream consciousness. With his "say your prayers and take your vitamins" mantra, he became a global icon. He had legendary rivalries with the likes of Rowdy Roddy Piper, Andre the Giant, and the Ultimate Warrior. The body slam heard round the world when Hogan lifted and slammed Andre at WrestleMania III is etched into wrestling folklore. That match alone drew over 93,000 fans to the Pontiac Silverdome and cemented Hogan's place in history. He didn't just compete, he inspired awe, turning every ring into a stage and every crowd into believers. But perhaps Hogan's greatest reinvention came in the 1990s when he shocked the world by turning heel and forming the New World Order in WCW. Gone were the red and yellow, in came the black and white. The move revitalized his career and changed wrestling forever. It made being a villain cool and showed fans a more complex version of the hero they thought they knew. WCW dominated ratings for nearly 2 years, and Hogan was at the center of it all. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame twice, first as a solo performer, then again as a member of the NWO. Even long after his prime, his entrance music, Real American, could bring arenas to their feet. Hogan didn't just wrestle, he created moments that lived on long after the final bell. But not all of Hogan's story was spotlight and celebration. In 2015, a private recording surfaced online, capturing Hogan using racial slurs in a disturbing and offensive rant. The fallout was immediate and brutal. He terminated his contract, scrubbed him from their website, and removed his name from the Hall of Fame. Public opinion turned fast, with major news outlets and fans alike questioning how such a beloved figure could fall so far. Sponsors dropped him. Talk shows dissected his words. Hogan issued a public apology, calling his comments unforgivable and expressing shame. But many questioned whether the apology was genuine or simply damage control. Over time, however, he began to take steps to repair the damage behind the scenes, privately meeting with community leaders and appearing at small wrestling events without fanfare. In 2018, WWE quietly reinstated him, citing his efforts to atone, but the shadow lingered. To some, he was forgiven. To others, the wound never healed. And then came politics. In 2024, Hogan delivered a surprise speech at the Republican National Convention wearing a Trump-Vance tank top. His endorsement of the MAGA movement shocked many of his fans, especially younger and more progressive audiences. "America needs to get jacked up again," he declared, flexing for the crowd. The moment was pure Hogan, flashy, dramatic, and polarizing. While some saw him as a patriot refusing to back down, others viewed it as a tone-deaf endorsement that reignited old tensions, reopened wounds, and reminded many of the divisive chapters in his past. The headlines returned, memes exploded. Talk show hosts debated whether Hogan had once again let his ego outpace his judgment. But for better or worse, he remained unapologetically himself, forever towing the line between cultural icon and controversy magnet. In the weeks before his death, rumors swirled about Hogan's declining health. Whispers of complications from multiple neck and back surgeries began to circulate in fan forums and across social media. He had long suffered from spinal issues, over a dozen surgeries by some estimates, and was often seen walking with a noticeable limp. Friends admitted in interviews that Hogan lived with daily pain, but never let it dull his public spirit. Some claimed he had turned down appearances in early 2025, citing fatigue. Still, he wasn't finished. In April 2025, Hogan co-founded a new wrestling promotion, Real American Freestyle. Unlike WWE or AEW, this was meant to celebrate the raw athleticism of wrestling with a throwback attitude. Hogan was set to serve as commissioner and ambassador, using his legendary name to promote the next generation of talent. The inaugural event was scheduled for August 2025, and Hogan had filmed promotional material just weeks before his passing. Insiders described him as quietly proud of the project. He believed wrestling had become too scripted, too corporate. Real American Freestyle was meant to be a return to form, a place where charisma, character, and grit mattered more than corporate branding. The wrestlers he mentored described him as surprisingly humble and deeply invested in their futures. He didn't just give advice, he listened, one young performer said. Hogan may not have lived to see the launch, but his fingerprints were all over it. In a way, it was his final match, not in the ring, but in legacy, a bold move to give back to the industry that had made him immortal. Hogan's first brush with Hollywood came in 1982 when he appeared as Thunderlips in Rocky III. It was a brief role, but unforgettable. Pitted against Sylvester Stallone's Rocky Balboa in a charity fight, Hogan's towering presence and exaggerated bravado exploded off the screen. He wasn't just acting, he was embodying a new kind of crossover superstar. Thunderlips was larger than life, both absurd and intimidating. The performance was intentionally cartoonish, and yet it worked, perfectly blending real-world intensity with theatrical flair in a way that only Hogan could pull off. Stallone would later recall that casting Hogan was a risk. He was a wrestler, not an actor, he said in a 2020 interview, but he had presence, and I needed someone who looked like a real-world giant. The success of Rocky III helped bring Hogan national attention before WWE even took off, boosting his mainstream appeal. It showed fans and casting directors that the Hulkster wasn't confined to the ring. That one sequence was enough to open Hollywood's doors, leading directly to his starring roles in action comedies like No Holds Barred, Suburban Commando, and Mr. Nanny. Following Rocky III, Hogan began headlining his own films. In 1989, he starred in No Holds Barred, a wrestling-themed drama that blurred the lines between fiction and reality. Hogan played R.I.P, a heroic wrestler who battles a brutal villain named Zeus, played by actor and real-life pro wrestler Tiny Lister. Though critically panned, the film performed well with young fans and led to a real-life feud between Hogan and Zeus in the WWF. It was one of the earliest examples of a film directly influencing a wrestling storyline, blurring the line between fiction and reality in a way that captivated fans. He followed up with Suburban Commando in 1991, playing an alien warrior who crash lands on Earth and ends up renting a room with an average suburban family. The fish-out-of-water comedy co-starred Christopher Lloyd and Shelley Duvall, and despite lackluster box office results, it became a nostalgic cult favorite. Then came Mr. Nanny in 1993, where Hogan played a reluctant babysitter for a wealthy, dysfunctional family. Critics mocked the film, but Hogan leaned into the humor, proving he could laugh at himself and didn't mind poking fun at his tough guy image. He also appeared in Santa with Muscles, a Christmas comedy where he plays a selfish millionaire who suffers amnesia and believes he's Santa Claus. The film flopped, but again, Hogan's willingness to poke fun at his tough guy image endeared him to a younger audience. For many kids of the 90s, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was the star of Saturday afternoon movie marathons. When the box office cooled, Hogan shifted to television. In 1994, he starred in Thunder in Paradise, an action-adventure series featuring a high-tech boat, sun-soaked beaches, and plenty of brawling. The show combined martial arts, cheesy one-liners, and Miami Vice-style production. While it only ran for one season, it found a second life in syndication and became a cult favorite among fans who embraced its over-the-top charm. Hogan also starred in a series of made-for-TV action flicks in the late 90s and early 2000s, including Assault on Devil's Island and Shadow Warriors. These military-style movies were low-budget and aired primarily on TNT, but they showcased Hogan's charisma and maintained his connection to a loyal TV audience. At a time when his wrestling appearances were dwindling, these films kept his face and brand in the public eye. He made guest appearances on hit shows like Walker, Texas Ranger, Suddenly Susan, and even Baywatch, often playing exaggerated versions of himself. In the 2000s, Hogan leaned into reality TV with Hogan Knows Best, which offered a rare glimpse into his personal life. The show was a ratings hit on VH1 and introduced him to a new generation. Love him or hate him, Hogan remained a presence across every screen, big and small. One area that offered fans an unprecedented look into Hogan's life was reality television. In 2005, Hogan Knows Best premiered on VH1 and quickly became a cultural phenomenon. The show followed Hogan, his then-wife Linda, and their two children, Brooke and Nick, as they navigated life under the microscope. It was a mix of light-hearted family drama and genuine tension, especially as Hogan struggled with letting his daughter pursue a music career and his son faced early adulthood with a camera crew watching him 24/7. The show ran for 4 seasons, and while it gave fans a more intimate view of the man behind the mustache, it also came with its own set of controversies. In later seasons, tensions escalated between Linda and Hulk, and the show ultimately ended after their very public divorce and their son's involvement in a high-profile car accident. Still, Hogan Knows Best remains one of the earliest examples of a wrestler successfully transitioning to reality TV, a genre that would go on to launch careers and expand the public personas of countless celebrities across sports, music, and entertainment. Hogan's presence on the show wasn't just a cameo, he was its emotional core. He was protective, often stubborn, but undeniably present. The world saw a different Hulk, vulnerable, sometimes overwhelmed, but still trying to be the hero his family needed. It added complexity to his public image, proving that even icons have private battles. Even when he wasn't in the spotlight, Hogan's image popped up in unexpected places. He made cameos in Gremlins 2, The New Batch, bursting into a movie theater to scold the mischievous creatures. He showed up in Spy Hard, Muppets from Space, and even in episodes of Robot Chicken, often parodying himself. Hogan became one of the few celebrities who could blend self-parody with seriousness, making him a perfect fit for these tongue-in-cheek roles. His voice was featured in animated shows like American Dad, where he played a version of himself, and in Romeo and Juliet, where he voiced a minor character in a star-studded cast. These appearances weren't always central, but they helped preserve Hogan's presence in pop culture. Children who had never seen a single wrestling match still recognized his voice, his look, and his name. In an age of fleeting fame, Hogan somehow stayed relevant. Whether through cartoon cameos, nostalgic callbacks, or meme-worthy moments, he managed to bridge the gap between generations. His ability to stay part of the conversation without ever really chasing it was a rare feat. In recent years, rumors swirled of a Hulk Hogan biopic in development at Netflix, with Chris Hemsworth attached to star. The concept alone sent fans into a frenzy. Would it tell the whole story? The rise, the scandals, the redemption, or would it play like a Hollywood puff piece? As pre-production dragged on, conflicting reports emerged about licensing issues, Hogan's level of creative control, and concerns from Netflix about potential backlash. The project remained in limbo. Hemsworth trained for the role, reportedly bulking up to match Hogan's legendary frame, Leaked photos showed him sporting the signature handlebar mustache and bandana, but delays persisted. Hogan himself offered vague updates, teasing something big coming soon, but nothing materialized. Some speculated the film would be shelved indefinitely following Hogan's death. Still, the fact that such a film was even considered spoke volumes. Hogan's legacy as an actor may not have been full of critical acclaim, but it was lasting. He carved out a unique niche as a wrestler-turned-actor who refused to be confined to one box. He made people laugh, cringe, cheer, and think. His film career mirrored his wrestling one, bold, chaotic, and utterly unforgettable. Hulk Hogan wasn't just a wrestler or a movie star. He was a cultural phenomenon. His life played out in arenas, on film sets, and in living rooms across the world. He brought energy, controversy, and a strange sort of sincerity to everything he touched. His passing leaves a gap in entertainment and in memory. And maybe that's the most remarkable part of his story. Even in death, Hulk Hogan isn't really gone. He lives on in every brother shouted across a playground, every parody, every meme, every nostalgic rewind to a time when heroes wore bandanas and flexed for the crowd. His legacy is messy, magnificent, and unmistakably human. He stumbled, fell, and got back up, always with the eyes of the world on him. He made mistakes, and he made memories. He took risks that others wouldn't dare. Whether he was delivering a leg drop in Madison Square Garden or babysitting kids on the silver screen, he did it with a flair that was entirely his own. Hogan's story is a reminder that icons are not made by perfection, but by presence. And in that, he was unmatched. From championship gold to box office flops, from scandal to redemption, he never stopped being a showman. And that, perhaps, is what made Hulk Hogan a true American original. Hogan's influence extended far beyond wrestling rings and movie sets. He became a symbol of American exceptionalism during the Reagan era, a time when his Real American theme song played like a national anthem for muscle-bound optimism. With his bleach blonde handlebar mustache, tanned physique, and booming voice, Hogan was the embodiment of a certain kind of American dream, bold, brash, and completely unfiltered. He preached loyalty, family values, and hard work, often in ways that aligned with concert. Merchandise bearing his image flew off shelves, action figures, lunchboxes, posters, and even vitamins. His brand wasn't just marketable, it was magnetic. Kids dressed like him for Halloween. Adults quoted him at parties. At the height of his fame, there was no escaping Hulkamania. It was everywhere. And even after the scandals, that image endured in memes, commercials, and nostalgic tributes. Whether revered or ridiculed, Hogan remained relevant. In that sense, Hogan was more than a man. He was a cultural artifact. A relic of a louder, more exaggerated era, yes, but also a touchstone for what it meant to believe in something larger than yourself. He gave people someone to root for, someone to question, and someone to remember. And while the world mourns his passing, it's clear that Hulk Hogan's story will be told and retold for generations to come, on screen, in the ring, and in the hearts of fans who grew up believing in heroes.